I'd have to say what I really enjoy about Happy State Bank is the morale that we have. Part of that goes back to the ownership that we talked about. Everybody understands as an owner, we're going to think like owners and not like managers, and we truly have each other's back each and every day. So that just the teamwork, everyone works so hard for each other, knowing that the ultimate goal is that each one of our customers is going to leave this bank knowing that we have given them everything we have as bankers to exceed any expectations they had out of our bank.
Hi, may I ask you all to stand, please? I would like to welcome Pastor Howard Griffin from the First Presbyterian Church to give her invocation. Pastor.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you for the rain, the moisture that it brings. We pray for continued rain. We pray, Lord, that you would continue to bring moisture into this land. And we thank you, Lord, for our city. We thank you for our city officials. We thank you for our mayor and all of our commissioners. We pray, Lord, that you give them the wisdom of Solomon to know exactly what to do today. We pray that you would guide them in their deliberation and their discussions. And we pray that your will would be done here in Amarillo as it is in heaven. Thank you, Lord, for your son. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor.
If I give you an update, this is my pastor, and I made that announcement when we prayed for us 2 weeks ago. He's still here. So.
You have a strong will, Pastor. Thank you.
He gets a lot of practice praying, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. I said that.
The meeting hasn't started yet, so this isn't okay. Would you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Amarillo City Commission held on the third floor of City Hall this Wednesday at 3 p.m. The first item of business on today's agenda is the minutes. The minutes are attached and those minutes are regarding the meetings held on February 12th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? If not, I entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move for approval of minutes as presented.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second for the minutes to be accepted as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. The next item of business is a public hearing, the teen curfew renewal. We will open this public hearing. Let me read exactly what it's about. The item conducts a public hearing to gather input on the potential renewal of the juvenile curfew ordinance, which will expire on March 20th, 2013. The Amarillo Police Chief will present data related to the juvenile curfew ordinance. The commissioners will receive comments from the public in order to determine if the curfew will be readopted, amended, or abolished per the requirements of the Texas Local Government Code 370.002. So at this time, we'd like to call that hearing, and I'd like to first ask the police chief to come forward and give us some information. Chief?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. We'll give you some information on the curfew violations over the last 3 years. In 2010, we had 73 cases that resulted in 89 arrests or citations being issued. In 2011, we had 66 cases that resulted in 99 arrests or citations being issued. And in 2012, we had 75 cases that resulted in 130 arrests or citations issued. That's about a 30% increase over the previous year. The majority of those juvenile curfew cases involve a minor in a public place and does not include a person to be charged under a separate statute for that, or they were in a business of some type. Now, other than the ordinance continues to be effective in reducing juvenile criminal behavior, and I believe it also reduces the likelihood that juveniles are going to become a victim of crime. So in light of that, we asked that you extend the curfew for another 3 years, and that's certainly we sent to our officers to do our juvenile investigation. And that's all I got. Unless you have some questions.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have a question for the chief?
I would like to just point out that, or have the chief point out so the audience will know that there are certain reasons for somebody under 17 to be out. Like, for instance, they may be with their parent, or they may be going to and from a job.
A school function or something like that, and they can certainly do that. Barring that after 12 o'clock, they're going to be.
Is there any questions from the public to the chief regarding this hearing? If not, then we'll declare the hearing closed. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought there was.
We asked if they had any questions for the chief, but they may have their own comments.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Pardon me. So is there anyone else who would like to make a comment regarding this ordinance in the audience? Is there anyone else on the commission who would like to make a comment? Thank you, Mr. Grant. If not, then we'll close this public hearing and we will move to ordinance number 7392. This is the first reading of an ordinance amending chapter 10-3, miscellaneous offenses of the Amarillo Municipal Code to re-adopt a nocturnal midnight and after juvenile curfew for persons under the age of 17 years. The City Commission last adopted the juvenile curfew in March of 2010. Per state law, a juvenile curfew must be reviewed and re-adopted every 3 years. The re-adoption of this curfew is recommended by the Amarillo Police Department. Now, are there any questions regarding this from the audience or from the commission? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move approval of ordinance number 7392.
Second.
A motion and a second for ordinance number 7392. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7393. This is the first reading of an ordinance changing the zoning of a 2.95 acre tract of unplatted land in section 62, block 9, BS&F survey, Randall County, in the vicinity of Sansu Road and Carter Avenue, from agricultural district to general retail district. It's recommended for approval by a 4-0 vote of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Are there any? I guess that we need a short presentation on this, Mr. City Manager.
Certainly, Mayor. We'd be glad to ask Mr. Shaw to talk about it. As you can see from the map while he's getting ready, this is one of the open frontage tracts on Sonsi. It's just south of Tartar. There's multiple uses on there. I think this is for both a new banking facility on one end and possibly some retail opportunity on the north. Kelly?
Thank you. As you know, along the Sonsi corridor, the predominant land use is non-residential land uses consisting of general retail, some multifamily, some car dealerships, those types of uses. This particular request, being undeveloped, has remained agriculturally zoned for some time, but with the proposed development plans, the applicant is requesting to change the zoning to allow the development of a bank with a portion of the area that remain undeveloped. But before that could happen, the change in zoning needed to occur. Retail zoning is appropriate for this strip. Again, with the strip platting that has been done along the Sonsi corridor, really doesn't allow it to be used or developed as non or as residential type uses. So this type of development, this platting pattern, and as well as the zoning, is all within character of the existing development along the Sonsi corridor. So the Planning and Zoning Commissioners felt the request was appropriate and recommended approval of it unanimously.
Okay. Are there any questions about this item from the audience or from the commission? Pardon.
Tell me a question. Do you have any idea, we're going to leave their downtown operation open, are they not?
I haven't had any discussions with what their plans are with their existing facilities.
I believe they are. I went to the groundbreaking. I think they were.
Okay.
It's strange.
Oh,
Okay, any other comments or questions from the audience or the commission regarding this? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 7393.
I second.
A motion and a second for ordinance number 7393. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7394 is first reading of an ordinance changing the zoning on Lot 1, Block 1, Oneida's Little Acre, Unit Number 1, in Section 173, Block 2, ABNM Survey, Randall County, in the vicinity of Tradewind Street and southeast 46th Avenue, from agricultural district to agricultural district with a specific use permit for the placement of a type A manufactured home. This is recommended for approval by a 4-0 vote of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And any comments from the commission or the audience? I would make a comment that I would like to learn more about this and suggest that I'd like to do a little more study on it. Any comments from the audience about this? Any comments from the commission?
I think, go ahead.
This was discussed at length in our work session, and some very good questions raised and a good discussion about it, so I think that we need to put it on.
Okay, is there a motion regarding this, or?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move that we table ordinance number 7394 for 2 weeks, and I would request that we put it on the March 5th agenda.
Second.
Motion is second to table this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Ordinance number 7395. This is the first reading of an ordinance changing the zoning of a portion of Tract 2 and a portion of Partial 1, West Cliff Park, Unit Number 18, in Section 24 and 25, Block 9 BSNF Survey, Potter County, in the vicinity of Westwood Drive and Blossom Way, from Plan Development District 55 BCG to Plan District Development District 374 for residential and grazing purposes. This is recommended for approval by a 4-0 vote of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And is there a comment about this from Mr. Shaw?
Be happy to tell you a little bit about it. This particular area, in the larger sense, is part of the West Cliff Park area, which was developed a long time ago and was originally developed as a master plan community. And part of that master plan, there were several open space, common area type designated areas throughout the development. As time's gone on, a lot of those original areas dedicated to open space were not under the maintenance or care of the homeowners association in the area. This particular area was one of those places that was designated as an open space common area. This property has subsequently been zoned or sold off. By far the majority of this area, it's a 28-acre parcel. The majority of it is within a natural drainage way. It's covered by a drainage easement. Probably about 85 to 90% of the property is within either the drainage easement or the floodplain area. There's maybe room for 1 or 2 houses. The applicant is requesting to change the zoning, which designates it as an public open area, to where he can develop a residential house and have the ability to have some animals on the property in order to actually just graze the property to keep the weeds and grass down, as the topography of the area doesn't allow any kind of commercial type mowers to be able to do that. This particular area is kind of in a transitional period from the residential development to the northwest and the non-residential development to the southeast, that being the intersection and uses around the Tascosa Road and Old Boulevard area. This is adjacent on one side by the Stanley Marsh property, which is zoned agriculture. So the uses would be similar. We talked with area residences and the applicant to make sure everybody was on the same page about what could be done and what couldn't be done. The plan development specifically states that single-family detached residential uses are allowed. Pasture land uses are allowed, and that's defined as being able to have grazing on the property of either horses or cattle only, not to exceed 1 animal per acre, so there would be a maximum of 28 animals to be allowed on the property. A lot of concern was about the drainage area and how the applicant might affect any drainage issues that would impact the residences to the west. The applicant has submitted a drainage study. He's been in contact with our engineering department. He's been in contact with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, TCEQ. He's very clear on what he can and cannot do, and what he's proposing to do would would not have any detrimental impact on the residents to the west. Bottom line, this property would be able to be developed, have a residence on it, be able to contribute to the economic base of the city via taxes. The property owners adjacent to the property are happy, the applicant's happy, so Planning and Zoning Commissioners felt it was appropriate and recommended approval unanimously.
Are there any questions about this item from the audience? Any from the commission? Not entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would move for approval of ordinance number 7395.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second for ordinance number 7395. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Resolution, synthetic drugs. This resolution calls for the United States Congress and the Texas Legislature to enact comprehensive legislation against synthetic marijuana and other substances marketed to mimic the effects of illegal substances and prohibiting the misbranding and false labeling of said substances. And, number 1, criminal sanctions for the manufacture, sale, delivery, and possession of synthetic marijuana and other substances marketed to mimic the effects of illegal substances and prohibit misbranding or false labeling of said substances. And 2, civil liability for sellers, retailers, distributors, and manufacturers of such substances to cause harm or death to a consumer. I would like to ask, there are many people in this audience that have worked very diligently to deal with this problem. It's a very, very difficult, complex problem, and I'd like to see if someone from the audience would like to come forward and make comments. I'd love to have you. This is as much an education process. Please come forward. As much an education process. We've learned a lot from this group, and we encourage their work. I think we'll see that from the result of this resolution. Sir, if you give your name and address, and we'd like to ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Reverend Darrell Hersey. I'm the executive pastor at St. John Baptist Church, 2301 Northwest 14th Avenue. Good afternoon, Mayor and distinguished madams and gentlemen. As me and my partners from IFCC, we appreciate the resolution that's going into attack, but we're also not satisfied for the simple fact that I have personally experienced where I had a relative that fatally suffered from these synthetic drugs. I also have a smoke shop that's right down from my church, and it's right across the street from an alternative high school. This is not acceptable. I mean, does it take to the point that we have one child suffer again before we react to it, where we can take measures for prevention before a serious matter takes place? These drugs affect children in a different way. Do we take the chance of one child that flips out, goes home, picks up a gun, and just starts open firing because they're spaced out on these drugs? Do we allow that the city board will say they can open up these types of businesses and continue to exist? Yes, we slap them on the hand, they get fined, but all they do is change names and then open these same types of shops over again. Is this permissible? Is it that we continue to allow this to happen in our communities? I refuse to allow this to happen into my community because there's one right down the street. And my partners, though we live in different areas, we're still experiencing those same problems that this happened. And do we just continue to say these owners and fine them? Maybe we shut them down for a minute, they close away, or they go up under the radar for 4 or 5 months and then they reappear again. But yet still, our kids are being exposed to this, and if we don't put it just to a dead end where it just cannot exist in the city of Amarillo, in Powder County, and Randall County, I think that this is what we need to address. I don't know what all the legal ramifications of this is, but from a moral perspective, do we continue to allow our children to damage themselves? Bad enough that we have to combat drugs and prescription drugs. Now we have this illegal stuff that kids are using to get by, to get jobs, so they can buy more of this stuff. When do we stop this? When do we we put our foot down? When do we decide, besides it being a political issue or trying to not step on toes, when it's for the sake of humanity? This is what I asked the board to consider. This is what we are trying to strive to, that we will refuse to allow another child to go under this influence and be paralyzed, to be mentally damaged, that the family has to spend a immense amount of money for their health care for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Sir, I would like to, if you don't mind, would you mind remaining at the podium? You may have, I'm going to allow a comment from myself, and then I'm going to ask Commissioner Dr. Eads to comment. We are very concerned about this, and we're darn proud you all are here raising this to a higher level of discussion. It's an important piece of education for our city, and what we didn't know about it, other than maybe the doctor, was significant. You have raised our level of awareness, but we are dead set on being effective, which I know your group is dead set on being effective too. We encourage the use, I think you'll see from this resolution, we encourage the pressure on the state legislature and on the National Congress, the U.S. Congress, to deal with this. We know that we can't overstep their laws, and maybe our city attorney could phrase that a little better legally, but we have to be careful in establishing something. And we understand just from a short time that Lubbock did this enactment, they've already gotten around that and reopened the shops. We were warned by folks that have delved into this that that can happen easily overnight. I'm going to ask Dr. And we encourage any kind of battle on this, but we want to be effective. We encourage that it's stopped. We encourage that it's not allowed in our town, but we want to be effective. We don't want to throw a Band-Aid on this and have it be torn off a day later. We don't want to see kids quietly then. But these people that are doing this are devious in their profit motive. They have no morals. I would challenge any of them to come here and defend anything they're trying to do. They would not be able to. But we want to be effective in how we deal with this. And our hands are somewhat, because the Constitution tied, yet we will not be silent and you won't be silent. And I encourage you to keep up this fight. Challenge us, challenge anybody, and we'll do as much as we possibly can. I would like to ask Dr. Eads to tell us some of what he tell you all, the audience, and let's get this discussion going, because all of this is good. The media is here. It's important that this discussion be carried on in our city, and we say we're not going to allow it. But how we enact not allowing it is critical to us, that it's effective, that it's not rushed under the rug, that it's not pushed out to the counties. I had a commissioner from Border comment to me yesterday and said, we don't want to push to our city either. And so it's devious, it's horrible, and we have to be smarter than them to solve this. So we encourage everything you said. I do. And I'd like to defer to Commissioner Eads, Dr. Eads, to give us kind of an indication of what we're up against.
Thanks, Reverend Hershey. Like you, I take care of kids every day, newborns, and responsible for their well-being. And like you, I can throw a rock from my house and hit one of these smoke shops. The biggest one that was busted on Washington Street about 2 months ago is right next to my house too, so I understand. The problem with these kind of issues are the same problems you have in the pharmaceutical industry. You can take active ingredients like THC, tetrahydrocannabinoids, that are the active ingredient in marijuana, and you can alter them ever so slightly. In fact, it's so easy to alter those substances that anybody with a graduate level chemistry course who's been working in the lab can add a little hydroxy group or a methyl group there, change the whole chemical structure, but it still has the effect that it had prior to changing the chemical structure. So when you begin to write down specific chemicals that need to be outlawed, very quickly they'll change those. And one of the problems with this process is that when some ingenious chemist slightly changes the chemical structure, there's a small percentage of the time they actually create something that's lethal. So the synthetics can be, as well as able to dodge current ordinances here, state or federal, can prove to be lethal, and they're on the street before anybody knows that they're there. The other problem is this is a very common practice with the pharmaceutical industry. For example, we all know about new drugs come on the market, they're very expensive, and they're good for 7 years, and then they go generic. Well, pharmaceutical companies will change the nature of a pharmaceutical very slightly so that they can go back and reappeal to the FDA, and it's no longer a generic medication. Yet, it may function very similarly to the original with maybe one additional bell or whistle. And so these people are good at this, and they've been doing it for a long time. One other issue, having researched this through the National Institutes of Health, is that sometimes these designer drugs, not necessarily the THC drugs, but other of these designer drugs that are on the market, when they go through the stomach or the liver or the kidneys and are slightly altered, they actually become an ingredient of a pharmaceutical medication. And so when you go in and try to do blood testing or urine testing to screen people for this, you will find a metabolite, a breakdown product of one of these designer drugs that's actually a pharmaceutical. So how are you going to distinguish those different classes of drugs and testing, and how are you going to then prosecute that? It's very difficult. And lastly, I would say on a very common level is that if we pass an ordinance like this in the city of Amarillo, very quickly go right outside the city limits, and there it's going to be, go to Borger, go to Rhode High School in Hereford, and very quickly you're going to find all the factories that are there. And so we've got to extend our reach to the state level, we've got to extend our reach to the federal level. And as the mayor has said, I'm with you, friend. We've got to do something about this quickly, but we can't put a Band-Aid on it. We've got to be comprehensive in our approach, and we've got a lot of fire under our state and federal legislators to see this is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, thank you. Any other comment that you make?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like other comments on this. It's important to us that people speak out about this, and I think it's also important that the media carry this message back to the public. Sir, again, if you would state your name and address.
My name is Terry Kirby. I live 710 South Pittsburgh. The synthetic drugs are basically no different than the drugs we got right now. You say they're pharmaceutical made, all this. There's not any smoke shops that have a license as a pharmacist. That ought to be one way to stop it right there. If they have chemicals in there that have to come from a pharmacy, they should be outlawed. The kids that are dying from these things, the grown-ups, a lot of it comes, unfortunately, from parents not being able to take care of the kids. We've been told we can't make a mind. These people that are selling these drugs are the same ones that was raised that way. They think they're beyond being in trouble. My kids have lost a mother over drugs. They found her thrown out on the streets in '95. And they've never found the ones that killed her yet. I'm the president of the Vietnam Veteran Chapter here in Amarillo. And this subject is real dear to my heart because I've had it in my family. And I don't want to see any kid get hurt. I don't see any grown-up get hurt because of ignorance of these drug dealers and all. I've had so much of this in my life from Vietnam all the way to even nowadays. And it's overwhelming how much Amarillo has changed since I went to the Marine Corps in '65 with all the drugs that are in Amarillo. You see them every day, you drive down the street, you sit there and watch kids smoke pot in the cars. But you call somebody and they don't have enough pot to put them in jail. It hurts. And I love Amarillo. And I know getting Amarillo is better than that. Thank you, Mayor.
Terry, I would comment, I thank you for your service. And I would tell you that we may not have been as effective as we could have been in Vietnam, but we can be more effective with this if we're smart and we stick with it.
Good afternoon. My name is Sonia Alexander, S-O-N-J-I. I am an Amarillo native, and I am the chairman of Impact Futures. I was born and raised here, went to Amarillo College, went to WT, and was a media professional for 20 plus years. I have, this is my hometown, I went to Tesco's High School. One of the major reasons I got involved in Impact Futures was I went to one of the smoke shops near my high school, Tascosa, and they said every day they turn away 30 students trying to get in with a fake ID because you have to be 18 to come in and buy the drugs. Also that they make, every day they put in they told us how many thousands of dollars worth of drugs that they sell and how they have to replenish it every day, every week, and how it's a real big money maker, and how, they told us to our face, we're really selling this. They also told us, one young man, a clerk at the store, told us that he can take a certain amount of the drug, but he knew he could only take so much. But the girl who worked with him at that same store said that she can take more because she can handle it, but he knows it would really wear him out and fry his brain. And so they know how dangerous that stuff is, but they still sell it because of the profit motive. Amarillo is where I was born and raised, like I said. I lived in Dallas, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Austin, Texas, moved back here, worked at Channel 7 the second time to finish my master's degree. And when I moved back the last time, I looked around and saw all the smoke shops. And when I was growing up here, there was maybe one or two that I never went into, didn't know what they had in there because I had heard what they were, the head shops. Now there are 12 or more, and it's like every corner. And this is my hometown. I am proud to be from Amarillo. It's a small town where people want to come raise their kids. But I really think that if we can think outside the box, and I know sometimes Lubbock has enacted their law, and the criminals have found a way around it, but there's got to be another way. Because we are smart too. We're educated too. And I think we can be as smart as them to come up with a way to protect our kids. I'm an aunt. My niece turns 18 years old today, on February 20th. So I just want to say we need to protect our kids. We should do whatever we can to protect the kids. They're all of our kids. This is our community, and we should try to do what we can to save our kids and allow people to know that Amarillo is okay to be a small town and live here and raise your kids, and that it's a safe place.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask Sandra a question before you leave?
Please.
Because you're chair of Impact Future, I'm interested, while we're working on this, are y'all doing something to try to educate people about how dangerous this is?
We have held town hall meetings. We had 3 of those last year. This year, just last month, we had our Above the Influence event, which was to celebrate the kids who are above the influence of drugs and alcohol. And we are, I know when I was teaching, taught for a year and a half at WT, and Louisa came and spoke to my class about the design of drugs and really, and how dangerous being on a college campus is. Even though you're college educated, it's what they call the drug-assisted sex assault. Being on college campuses is not so safe. And our main thing is education. Our main thing is to letting people know and making them aware of what kinds of, the drug, not just the drugs, the alcohol, and the synthetic drugs as well.
Thank you. Thanks for your work.
And thank you.
I have a question. Since you have been in one of those shops, after school hours and any day of the week, are there a long line of parents that are going in and out of those shops?
We wish there were, but and I know we had and this is just an example, but when I was at WT, I told my students we had a prescription drug form right in our building, the Chase building where the Impact Futures offices have moved. And I said, I'll give you guys 10 points extra credit if you'll come and all you have to do is show up. You don't have to say anything, just come. And I know some may have had transportation problems because it was at WT in Amarillo, but I think maybe 1 or 2 showed up. I mean, there's just they don't understand how dangerous it is. And I know being someone I think even as a media person, I really didn't know. It really was shocking. Like when I went into the smoke shop that Louisa took me to, there were bongs and there were on the shelves, and there were the urine tests where you can where you can pass a drug screen, that kind of thing, and that's what do you use those for? It's not for a legitimate drug or legitimate job search. It's to pass a drug screen. So I don't those things and know what they're used for, and having the pills on the shelves that said not for human consumption, but there were 2 pills in that little packet for $20. that you can buy. And so that's what it's for. The kids know what it's for. Even though it says not for human consumption, the kids use it as a drug. And so they know it's to get high. So, and there's the different smokable that they sell as potpourri, but you don't smoke potpourri. You put it in a box or a little barrel and put fire under it, they smoke it. So they know what to do with it. It might say on the package what not to do with it, but they know what to do with it and how to get, they want to get high, and a lot of them get hurt. And it's not just here, it's across the state, and it's nationwide as well.
Thank you, Sonia.
And thank you.
Anyone else?
Mayor, I might point out that there are some bills in the legislature that are going to be coming up for consideration, and I'm sure that your group is aware of that, and you need to do everything you can to get those pushed through.
And I think we can send that message when we for Panhandle Days to our legislators, that this is a serious issue, that we're not just going to accept that there's nothing we can do. I think we've got to discover, as you all said, we're smarter. How do we fix this? I'm not going to accept that there's nothing we can do, but I think we've got to be smart. Thank
That's why
you.
we're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you. Jim, there are bills in the legislature.
Sir, would you mind giving your name?
I'm sorry, Vince Nowak.
Excuse me.
I'm not a city resident.
That's okay.
I'm just outside the city, which is
Just give us
where,
an
if you put this ordinance in effect, it'd be right next to my house. There are bills in the legislature, Jim, and I read them this morning. And the bad guys are chemists, and I'm not a chemist. They read them this morning or yesterday or whenever they were introduced. And the minute they're signing a law, the bad guys are going to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of the law. They're always going to change something. The mayor called for a higher level of discussion, and the resolution, I think, should be a little bit stronger, but I think it's a good first step. But my question, and it's not rhetorical, is what's next? I appreciate the fact, and I had a good conversation with the city attorney earlier this week, that banning it just in Amarillo pushes our problem just outside our city limits. And that's not being a good neighbor, not being a good citizen, not being a good steward to our children and our neighbors. But what is next? We said, and this is not rhetorical, we send this resolution to the state and to Washington. How do we follow up on that? How do we shut these pernicious peddlers of poison down? It is, Impact can tell you far better than I can, but I've seen what it's done to children. It has killed children, it's fried their brains, and it's murdered the souls of the parents that don't know what to look for because the chemists are 1 step ahead. So I guess my question, and again, it's not rhetorical, is what's next? What do we do next?
Mr. Novak, aside from that, do you mind giving your address? Literally, I need.
Yes, sir. It's 1301 Dawes Drive
Thank you.
in Eaglesford.
Thank you.
Thanks for considering my comments, and I'll be back on this issue.
Well, don't go away yet.
Yes, sir.
I would, you know, this is a difficult thing for our city attorney to be pressed on immediately, because obviously there's legislators nationwide and statewide that are just as concerned as you all are and we are about how to effectively deal with this. But I am going to ask that we begin to discuss it at a higher level and figure out a solution. And so I'm going to put our city attorney on the spot and ask a couple of questions that maybe we can keep this discussion up with.
Who I have a tremendous respect for.
I mean, there's no question about that, but again, it's the effectiveness.
Yes, sir.
And there is no doubt that what you've done has already raised the level of discussion. We've got to continue that. But I, just like you, I want to know what's next. So if we can't write one that stays ahead, I just don't know how in the world, at this point, the state or the federal government can write one. And what we do to press that a little more. You said the resolution needs to be stronger. In what ways would you?
I would, first of all, I would demand action. And someone earlier mentioned education. Parents need to be educated. Look, the kids get all the education they need in school from their classmates, from their friends. They know what these drugs are. Parents know. I would add to the resolution some sort of language asking for education for parents. In your question to the city attorney, which I'm going to step in, Mark, if you don't mind, We just need someone really, really smart to draft legislation around these drug dealers. And I gotta believe that a sober mind is smarter than a drugged up mind. I gotta believe there's someone out there, and the doctors can help, to draft legislation that is not a step behind, but is always a step ahead.
Well, you know, maybe it's taken it from a totally different angle. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's not the chemical part, but maybe it's, I don't know what it would be.
Mayor, I think
City Attorney, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I would suggest that the resolution does begin to take a step in a different direction. I think everyone who has considered this, we've all reached the same conclusion. The law will always be reactive to a chemist who modifies a molecule. And there's apparently an infinite number of changes a chemist can make, and it can still get you high. And so, whether it's the city council, whether it's the state legislature, whether it's the U.S. Congress, on some periodic basis, they're going to have to go back to such a law and update the schedule. Well, now this drug with this molecule is illegal. And that can be done. There's a lag time. It would require an aggressive, systematic, regular updating to be effective. However, the resolution does suggest another path. You may remember the infamous Al Capone for all the crimes he committed, and he didn't crimes.
Tax evasion.
Tax evasion. Well, I agree, Mayor. Maybe we need to take a different approach. Your resolution suggests not only making a criminal offense, it also suggests creating a lawsuit. Now, everybody hates lawyers and lawsuits, but maybe this is one time we can put it to good use. To make it a cause of action against the manufacturers, distributors, and the sellers, the retailers, who manufacture, mix, compound, label, package, distribute, warehouse, sell, any of these substances that we described in the previous section that make it a crime. When that substance is a cause of injury or death to a consumer, then the consumer or the survivor should be authorized to bring a civil suit to recover damages of every kind, including punitive damages,
With a good, strong presumption.
attorney fees, cost of suit, and an injunctive relief against that seller, distributor, manufacturer. The prior section requires that it would be against the law to put any of these substances on the shelf without disclosing proper branding of what the ingredients are. That way, the emergency room doctor at least knows what they're dealing with. It would also make it an offense for that package labeling not to state the distributor's name and address, so you know who it is when you go after these people. And the presumption that Mr. Nowak alludes to, the last part of this resolution says, in either a criminal prosecution or a civil suit, provide that in the absence of a legible, truthful, accurate labeling stating the contents and ingredients and the name and address of the manufacturer and distributor, then there arises a presumption that the manufacturer or distributor knew that this would cause injury or death to a human if consumed. You know, to lawyers, a presumption is a powerful tool of the law. That would up the ante. In our conversation, Mr. Nowak and I earlier this week, he suggested that, of course, we're not writing this law. We are recommending this type of law to the legislature or Congress to add education and add also an insurance requirement. If you're going to be a retailer of these products, well, let's put some hefty
Some money to pay for the injuries.
Let's up the ante for them to get into it. Now, you understand there's always a two-edged sword. If you up the ante so high on the retailers, what will happen to this product? It goes underground. It becomes an illicit drug that these officers fight every day in the back alleys, in the back seats of cars, and it's an underground economy then. So there's, and that's a debate for another day. I would like to go back to a comment just briefly that the pastor pointed out. He made the statement that you slap their hands and they reopen. I hope no one in this room is deceived. Please do not be deceived. If this city, like our sister city Lubbock, were to enact an ordinance and make this a crime, what the penalty is only, you have to pay a fine. There is no jail time. As a city, the only penalty we can impose on a person is a monetary penalty. And it's a very low penalty, a maximum of $2,000. Most of them are $500. Traffic offenses are another amount. We don't believe that's a sufficient penalty. We think there ought to be hard jail time. But to do that, you need either state legislation or you need Congress to act. It is those higher levels of crimes where you run into imprisonment and the higher fines, $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 fines. We cannot do that as a city. We cannot do that as a city. All we can do is pass speeding ordinances and dog-at-large ordinances, things of that character. And this ordinance, if we passed it, would be no greater than that. It would be a monetary fine. We could not stop enjoying the person. They would be back open. And so the mayor has said today, the mayor said several weeks ago when this first came up, we want to do something that's effective. We don't want them just to move on the west side of Soncy and reopen their doors to our children. Most of our children at this age have cars, and they can drive right over to Soncy, they can drive out to Hollywood Road beyond the city limits, they go out there and buy fireworks. They'll just drive up north, outside the city limits, and we haven't done a thing, have we? And so we encourage, by this resolution, we are encouraging the most effective action that's immediately available. The bill is currently pending in the Texas legislature. If you want to contact your state senator, Kel Seliger, and your state representatives, Mr. Smithy and Mr. Price, it's Senate Bill 263, Senate Bill 264, House Bill 124. This resolution will be sent to them, voicing the city's insistence that they act on this so that we have a statewide solution.
Is there anything, Mr. City Attorney, that can be put in there that would require some kind of action or demand of action?
No more so than anyone can demand that you act, Mayor. It is a request, it's a democratic process. And our legislators, you were there earlier this week, I understand they're aware and they're highly sensitive to this issue.
Could we suggest, Marcus, as Mr. Novak asked what's next, could we suggest certain language for Senate Bill 263 for Senator Seliger?
Certainly we can.
Well, I think, Mayor, if I might, just a moment, the resolution, I do believe, is well done and takes two paths rather than one, which the traditional language is focused on the chemistry, as it always has. Mayor, I think with the submission of this resolution, a very strong vocal support from Mr. Nowak, Ms. Matthews, your group, we can encourage those legislators to consider adding that second path, so to speak, into one of these bills. We're still very early in the session. Time is ripe and appropriate for an opportunity to do that. Most of us, many of us were at the Capitol yesterday. This is a big issue. Everybody's aware. Everybody's frustrated. Everybody wants to address it. But I do think Mr. Norris's point that at the local level, even if we found that magic way to do it, we cannot institute a strict enough penalty to act. I mean, you're in effect putting in a permission slip just because it's such a small penalty. At the state or at the federal level, if we find that magic solution, I think we can have real effect. So the what's next, to me, would offer that as one possible suggestion. And I think the legislators would be willing to hear that. What they ultimately do is subject to the legislative process as always, but they know. They know this is a big deal.
Phone calls help.
The other question,
Call your representatives.
the other question that I would have in a comment that was made, and again, Mr. Norris, systematic updating. And so let's say that the legislature doesn't act, and we take an action, and we know it's not going to be as effective. But my view is that then we continue this, that we try and change it. And I think then we wear them out a little bit. on the other side, but I don't think we let up on the legislature to deal with it the way you've spoken.
Well, that's a good point, Mayor. Which opens the door to the, again, it's an onion we peel. There are different layers to this issue. It is a complex issue. Then, whether it's at the state level or at the city level, whether it's the city or the state or the federal government, you then have to pay a laboratory to begin to do analysis on all of these substances. And I haven't been in one of these shops, but I imagine there are dozens of products in there. And
they all have lab reports. They all have clean lab reports because the chemists stay one step ahead. That's why we need really, really smart.
But we're talking about our side.
On our side, where I'm going is the cost to the city before we can prosecute, before you can say, yes, that's one of the banned drugs. We have to get a sample of it. And then, again, we being the city, the state, whoever is going to do this legislation, and then pay for the cost. Currently, we do not have access to the Department of Public Safety Laboratory. They'll not test these things for us. They're busy testing.
And their backlog is what, 6 to 9 months?
They've got a huge backlog, and they're testing heroin and
sure,
other drugs that we can prosecute easily and that long been illegal and are dangerous in their own right. Whereas some of these are just household products being misused, like potpourri.
Well, when they say it's potpourri, it's really not potpourri.
I know it's not.
Okay.
I know, I understand it's a herbal.
And it's not bath salt, something you get out of your bathroom. I mean, it's poison.
I've got a question for Marcus.
But the cost of that,
It is prohibitive.
the cost is a factor that in this public debate. And I realize there was an emotional argument of what's the cost of one life, and there's always that argument. There is, in reality, a budget that has to be passed every year. And how much can be spent on drug testing to find out, well, does that meet, oh, this is a new molecule, put that on the list for our next amendment before we begin.
That does nothing about moving it outside the county. It does nothing about moving it to border. So again, to me, while we may do some damage with that, it is not effective to move it to some other area. And I think people would agree on that. But it may become of interest to me more personally if the legislature doesn't act on this or the federal government doesn't, because we need to find a way to wear them out. I have another question about our current health laws. We see every week in the newspaper about restaurant inspections. Is there anything we could go that direction with, or we had to do something to have them look at every portion of that place and see what they're doing inside that place?
They don't sell things for public, for consumption. It's the problem. The packages say not for human consumption. That's how they're getting around it right now, which I know seems simplistic.
I have said this often, I'm the old guy here.
Yes, sir.
And I grew up in Clovis, New Mexico, which was in a dry county at that time, as was Roosevelt County, the county immediately south of Curry County, Clovis is. And there was one infamous bootlegger that had no qualms to sell to anybody. They could carry it out and sell it to them. And there was a posse put together, if you will, of parents that wrote down license numbers, took pictures, and identified anybody that went into or came out of that particular bootlegger because he just seemed to operate. Some bootleggers have a conscience, but this one didn't. He wasn't in business very long. Somebody said there was like 12 of these shops. 15
That
shops.
doesn't include all the little discount stores that are selling.
Yeah.
You know, I looked at the labor code today, and picketing is permissible.
We're going to take it.
Okay. You just can't get in the way of ingress or egress.
We're going to ask you to address us. I'm sorry.
I apologize, Your Honor.
It's okay.
I've got it.
Yes.
Got a question. I've heard this problem compared to ecstasy in the 90s. And is that a fair comparison? Maybe you don't know this, Marcus, I don't know. But is that a fair comparison? And what happened then? What do people do then? Anybody know?
It moved into this drug is what I think.
They passed some federal laws, they put it on the schedules and some of our state drug schedules, and they just addressed the derivatives of that. But I agree with Dr. E's comment earlier. this is not a specific, they're not taking just a specific drug and modifying it. It is a variety of just things you could buy at the hardware store, chemicals and substances, and they're mixing them and compounding them. And that, again, that's it's just, it is infinite. And it's not all we refer to as synthetic marijuana, and that's a big part of it. But there are, the problem is not limited to synthetic cannabinoids. Am I right, Dr. Reeves?
I would like the city to look at anything they could do with any of the other extraneous things. I recall the book, Mayor Giuliani came here and spoke, and reading his book, he talked about solving issues there. They couldn't stop the people from squeegeeing your car, so they cited them for jaywalking every time they stepped off the curb. After they got 200 or 300 citations, they quit. So I would like us to mount any kind of effort that's legitimate to deal with them on any matter that they could be pursued on. And I think that could be number of parking places out in front of their building, and whether they're doing that, I think it could be any sort of thing that we can do. And I guess my other question would be, is there, I don't think we have the ability to license this kind of operation, because we don't license businesses in general in the city. Is there anything that we could do to enact a special sort of class for this, or is that just beyond the constitutional ability?
And there with that direction, let's continue to explore it. Again, again, the question of what's next. Well, this is a step. It's not the final step. We know it's not the solution. It is a step. And we will continue to look at those.
I think we brainstorm.
I just have one other comment. You know, I'm sitting here thinking of how all this would be enforced and so forth, and I'm thinking about seeing Chief Taylor sitting there and thinking how are his officers going to be able to get through this myriad of complexity on this issue. And so I do think we need to give it some further thought, because they would have to be educated on what to look for and how to do that, and how you're going to test it on site to make sure you can make an arrest. And so, I mean, it's more complex than we had even imagined. You know, just sitting here and listening to all this testimony. So I think that we do need to have some way to come together and start thinking about what can be done, but this is a first step for us to go forward with, so that we can have a starting point to move forward to try to address the scourge on our community. I've never been in one of those shops. I think I'll go to one now to see what it looks like, because it sounds very interesting. But I think that, you know, the more education we have and the more dialogue we have, the better effect we will have on really addressing the problem. We can't do it with just one thing. We're going to have a bunch of tools to do this.
And what would be wrong with arming the people that are going to picket with a list of offenses that those people might be committing, and they could report them instantly and have police there to visit them if they're not parking correctly, if there's anything wrong, to give them some pause about what they're doing.
We always want to educate people about the law.
I don't want to be down on the younger generation, but it's mostly kids going to these shops. And you can hand out pamphlets saying this is what it's going to do to you. It's not going to work. You need to get the parents.
But the difference here is, from when I was in the 60s, people made mistakes, and these mistakes kill them the first time.
Absolutely.
If someone took down the license plates, ran those through publicly available databases, and sent them to the parents, maybe some of the parents don't know where their child's spending their allowance money.
A lot of parents don't. Look, I didn't know what my kids were doing.
Go back. I'm going to ask if you would, we've gone over, it's been important to us, but I'd like to hear from other people.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for
your
attention to this issue.
Great and important discussion. Sir, welcome.
Hi. Mike William, 8530 Southwestern. Just hearing what the doctor said about these drugs that have to be, after 7 years, they expire and they change one molecule. Generally, when they change that one molecule, don't they have to go through FDA testing again? That takes millions of dollars to do that, a bunch of paperwork. You know, these synthetic drugs, there's no paperwork, there's none of that being done. I know that they're selling them as, not as a drug, they're selling them as something else. But when I go to the store to buy some cleaner to clean my office with or something like that, there's a MSDS sheet telling me all the dangers of that chemical and all that.
That's true.
And
you're required to have them in your possession on a shelf in a book if there's anything. And Mr. City Attorney, I'd like to look at that. We could not open our business without the MSD sheets for any compound that was in our store. And it was a violation for them to come in and check that. So maybe there's another route where, as they change it, they better update their book or it's another violation. I'd really like us to use some imagination to figure out how to wear them out.
So,
Okay, well, let's keep the ideas coming. And anything else?
I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Anyone else, please? Sir?
Steve Douglas, 4340 Ridgecrest. And I remember, oh, by the way, I want to thank the Commission for hearing us today. I remember not too long ago we had public leaders do commercials on water wasting. What about something about like this? I mean, education is the key to this. And maybe parents need to hear from our leaders what is going on in the city.
Be happy to look at that. Mr. City Manager, would you look into that and see what we can do?
We can look with Mayor.
Very quickly. He'll deal with it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's an important comment. You know, we're just touching the surface of things we can fight back with, but we can fight back.
Bob Tolliver, 4400 Southwest 3rd Avenue, Amarillo, Texas. This indeed is a very insidious topic and very complex in nature, both from a legal standpoint, chemical standpoint, and a naturalistic standpoint. For hundreds and hundreds of years, Native Americans have used different herbs and medicines for healing. So we're looking at the chemical alteration or additive to something basically like parsley with a chemical in it. If a young person wants to get a buzz or get high, they're going to figure out how to do it. One of my building's air conditioners suddenly stopped cooling, only to discover that kids had come by with balloons and siphoned off the freon from that and were huffing it to get high. And the man said, "We're lucky we didn't have bodies out there." Years ago, people would get parsley or some other things, either get some 90-octane gasoline fuel, or preferably 100-octane jet fuel, and put a few drops on it, let it dry out, roll it up, and smoke it, and it was better than the best THC marijuana high you could ever have. Parsley with gasoline on it. You want to get high, you can find a way. We have something locally, actually worldwide, that there's no way in the world that we could ever regulate. Are you familiar with a plant that is fatal to cattle called Jimson wheat, also known as nightshade? It has been used, again, for hundreds of years as an analgesic and to treat asthma. Also, the alkaloids in it are what create those chemical reactions in the body. All it takes is just a slight increase in those alkaloids of that plant that's used for medicinal, legitimate medicinal purposes to induce hallucinations and death. Just a slight increase, no alteration in the chemicals. This is a weed that grows everywhere. Kids are going to do what they're going to do. It's a problem. It's education. That is the bottom line. Also look on the market. Unfortunately, the civil and criminal liability, I believe, Mr. Counselor, can be circumvented as the major pharmaceuticals do, unfortunately, by simply putting the adverse effects of whatever's contained in the bottle or in the package, such as all the medication that now says one of the adverse effects may be death.
Sir, I'm going to ask you at this point, your time is up. I think we have to be careful too that we don't add a litany of things that they might go to alternately as we discuss this and they make a move to something else. So I understand that this is being filmed and it's public debate. There are children available to watch this. I really don't want to inspire them to any other use or any other agent they might have not discovered until we hear it here. Thank you.
Mayor, the pastor's comment does raise the point too, whether it's the city council or the legislature or the Congress, the difficulty in drafting so that we don't inadvertently outlaw otherwise lawful substances that have been used for centuries, be it caffeine or alcohol or these herbal remedies of all times.
Yeah, but yet we had to separate out tobacco and figure out what was really going on there, and we've sort of done that.
True.
We continue to do it, and I don't think we're ready to give up on this one either. So, sir, please.
My name is Joseph Hayes, 802 South Mississippi Rear, Amarillo, Texas. I was very pleased to hear Ms. Green speak about education earlier. I think that if you really want to stop it, and I believe that you do, that would be where you would focus all of your efforts. I grew up in San Jacinto. Everybody knows it's a pretty rough neighborhood. And, you know, going to Sam Houston Middle School, we had a campaign called Just Say No. Okay, well, worked on me, believe it or not. It was very successful. I think it probably helped most of the kids who go to that school. So if you really want to stop it, then that would be the way to go. I think the city attorney is probably correct. The fees will have minimal effect, if any, at all. So I would just, if it's worth anything at all, I'd say stress the education.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Anyone else would encourage other comments?
David Cossey, 1014 Cimarron Canyon. Just for fear of not speaking against the Roberts rules, I wanted to address this topic instead of the public comments later. My big concern with the labeling aspect is California recently witnessed labeling food products that are for human consumption, that are genetically modified, aren't required to be labeled. That's something that a lot of groups are trying to get done, and I would completely agree with that, that anything that could possibly be consumed that's harmful should be labeled correctly to react to it in a health case through the, what happens to you when you consume it. But I just think it's kind of a, when you try to address things from the government side, it starts to become a slippery slope. You have unintended consequences where you start trying to regulate every single thing that could possibly be harmful. You mentioned gasoline. When I was in high school, gasoline was the #1 thing. They would go down and get a gas tank, do that stuff. I mean, I never did. I haven't done anything to speak of at all. But my concern is, from the government side to the public side, the public has to address this through parenting, through the school systems, through their own choices. And when you start to legislate choices, then the what's next question becomes what other choice is next that perhaps is harmful to a minority of people that now you're going to regulate for everybody. It's the same debate for gun control. What a minority of people do that's harmful to themselves or others, you're regulating the entire population in an attempt to regulate that minority that's harmful. And so I'm just saying, use as much caution as possible, but also use as much rigor as possible to address the issue. But I agree with the previous. Education, and I know y'all know me from the red light cameras and cell phone, education is the #1 thing that I would agree that you couldn't spend too little in trying to address it through education. I would say you can do too much trying to address it through regulation or legislation.
I think we've seen that we would propose education is important, but I also think that you bring up the gun issue. If somebody's holding a gun to my head, I'm going to try and escape or get out. And there are kids today with a gun held to their head, and we don't know it. And so I'm going to try and react in a little more prompt manner than simply discussing what could or couldn't happen theoretically. Anyone else, please? We have this resolution, and if there are no other comments by the commission or by the audience, I entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we move forward with
Second.
A motion and a second for the resolution regarding synthetic drugs. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. We wish you all the goodwill and effort. We will support this as, not just with this resolution, but in any manner we can. We hope you take that message back and don't think we're giving up on this. Okay? Item number 8, resolution, payday and auto title lending. This resolution calls for the Texas legislature and governor to enact law to stop usurious lending by payday and auto title lenders, and curtailing credit access, businesses, exploitation of economically vulnerable citizens. And we're going to have a comment on this too, but I would like, because it's been a very important topic, I would like to ask our commissioner, I would make a comment, but I'd also ask our Commissioner Escajeda to make a comment about her concern about this. Her background is in banking, and she served on many boards statewide that have dealt with things like this, and I think it's important, again, that we begin this education process of what's happening to our citizens. Commissioner.
This topic of payday and auto title lenders is nothing new, but it has come to the forefront in the state of Texas, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years. And there has been a concerted effort statewide to try and curtail the activities of the payday lenders. And if you're not familiar with payday lenders, or you probably have one in your neighborhood because there's like 30 of them in town. And unfortunately, they try to locate themselves in mostly low to moderate income communities because they know that people are desperate sometimes for cash and they need a quick fix. They can't borrow money from relatives. They don't feel comfortable going to the bank. And so they go to the payday lenders and then they find they can never get out because they're paying such high interest rates, as much as 500% on a payday loan. Now, I don't know how many of you want to pay 500% on any money you borrow, but I don't. And so these people are strapped with assets that they really don't have very many of, and it ruins their credit. They even get thrown out of their houses, they lose their cars. And so we as a community have an obligation to try to do something about this. I know that the state did something in the last legislature, but all they did was require them to give people disclosures, but they did nothing about the interest rate. Banks traditionally lend at much lower interest rates, and banks are aware that they need to do a better job to provide services to low-income and moderate-income families because they're the ones in the most need of this. So I'm really glad that the city is taking a stand to pass a resolution to move forward with this. But there are a lot of community groups, including things through the Asset Building Coalition that we have here in Amarillo, to try to educate people. And we're going to work on making more services available to people who don't traditionally use these. But they're not traditional anymore because there's some on the southwest part of town. They're over here on the east side of town. They're everywhere. And they make it really easy because all you have to do is produce a driver's license, a bank account number, and an address. They don't check their credit. They don't do any of that. They just go ahead and lend them the money because it's so easy to get it. And so when it's easy, you would think, well, gosh, this is easy. And so we want to make sure that we provide the information necessary, and that will require a lot of education through some of our community partners. So I am very much in support of doing something locally to try to impress on the state legislature that they need to do something about it, because everything that we do is trumped by the state legislature. If they don't have that law in effect, whatever we do that is not in concert with state law would be invalid. So that's why we're doing another resolution to send to our state legislatures, because the voices are being raised to do something about this.
This is not an issue unlike the other one. There's a lack of education in the public. I had a friend of mine come in my business the other day and said, can you help me? I made a mistake. My sister's daughter needed medicine overnight. I had to send her $700. It was imperative. He was not an ignorant person. He was not destitute. He walked in unknowingly to a payday lender and borrowed a small amount of money. And the 300% interest rate, he was within 3 weeks trying to figure out. He come out from underneath the ether, and he understood what was going on. And he was desperate to get out of this. And so we actually sent him across the street. He was afraid that he didn't have the proper credit rating. He would have had to do this. We talked to him a little bit. We sent him across the street to a bank. somebody that we deal with there, and they dealt with him honestly and paid the note off. And it cost him an unbelievable amount of money for that 3 weeks of financing. People don't know what's going on with this. I'd also like to comment that I cannot believe when auto dealers and any other lender come under the Office of Consumer Credit Commission and are scrutinized. They can walk in our place. I see another relative of a car dealer here. They can walk in our place on demand and inspect our records, and that's great. I encourage that. We pass those anytime we need to. If they want to walk in my place tomorrow, we'll pass it. And I will tell you that these people don't get any scrutiny. They're not regulated. They're not scrutinized. They have nothing to do with the legitimate businesses, and I would call this an illegitimate business. They're taking absolute advantage of people that are ignorant, and not stupid. They're ignorant. They don't know what can or can't be done. We need to draw attention to this as much as the other thing, because this dramatically alters people's lives. This guy could have lost his livelihood. He would have lost his truck. He put his truck title up. The truck was probably worth 5 times what he borrowed. So he just did it quickly. And the bank was sure securing the note. And again, it's a matter of education and people taking advantage of other people. Sadly, this is an item that we need to press the legislature on to do something. I cannot believe they allow this, but there's a tremendous amount of money being pushed by the people that do this to keep the legislature from dealing with this problem. That they can't put it under the Office of Consumer Credit Commission is abhorrent to me. We all have to deal with rules and laws, and they have no laws and no scrutiny.
They're called credit service organizations. So they're not.
So they don't have to deal with Regulation Z or the FTC or any of those other regulations. They don't get hit with any usury rates, and I don't think that commonly people know about this, and many people that never would grace their door really don't have the knowledge to know that what's happening, because it's happening to their kids, their relatives, and other people, and it's really hurting the community more than we realize at this moment. So, Commissioner, I thank you for taking the lead on this. And do we have any other comments about this? Or I'd love to hear some other stories. We need to get some testimony going here too about what the problems are that exist with this.
I have no intention of coming up here this many times. Bob Tolliver, 4400 Southwest 3rd Avenue in Amarillo, Texas. Mr. Mayor, I couldn't agree with you more. I have had, in the 4 years that I've been here, in the last 2 years, I have had 8 individuals who have come to me to help them with some finances. The problem was, I believe they had exhausted all of their assets with these businesses that you are describing. There is another problem on top of these legitimized, so to speak, businesses, and that is the private lenders. The 7 people that had come to me in the last 2 years were also having to go to private loan sharks, and they were being charged 300% per week. No title, no assets to hold, nothing that the bank could hold. I know this is in one Hispanic community as well as in one of the Somali communities. So I would really, it just burns my earlobes that people take advantage of people. Part of the issue that we're struggling with is the banking regulations, the federal level, and lending practices. That needs to be addressed. I would like to see.
I hate to interrupt, but I want to clarify. I don't think that's the same issue. It's a different issue. I would like to keep my point on this issue, Father Bob. I don't think the banking regulations, I mean, they're very strictly regulated, and I do not think that allows these people to operate or not, does it?
No, what it does, no, that's not what I'm talking about them operating. It is cutting out an avenue for the individuals that need money. The banks will not loan those individuals money because they are high risk and don't have any collateral to put up, so they have no other choice than to go to these lenders. And if these lenders won't extend them money, which is outrageous in itself, they have to go seek out other private individuals that do the same.
I see your hand, excuse me, but I wanted to clarify that. Okay.
Okay, I thought it was very clear on that.
Allow me to respond, and we'll cut into your 3 minutes. I do take exception to, you're saying that banks do not provide services to these individuals. There is a concerted effort taking place right now where banks are going to really publicize that they are doing this to make the $500 loan that most people, some banks didn't even make $500 loans. No cost checking accounts, free debit cards, start a savings account, start an IDA account so that you can plan to buy a house at some point in time or start a small business. The banking industry, if you want, has to realize their mistake, and they are now being more accessible than ever because they know that they have to do this. And for a lot of our communities, a bank is a foreign institution. They would never go there because they just have a perception that the doors are not open. But that's not true. I would say that every community bank in Amarillo, Texas, and the surrounding panhandle knows that they have an obligation to take care of low to moderate income individuals who have a need for banking services and products. And so I would challenge anyone to dispute that. And, I do a lot of education on that, and a lot of it has to do, again, it's education, letting people know what's available. And so maybe we've all done a poor job of educating on all kinds of fronts, but we do a lot of education through the banking system to give people financial tools so that they can better their lives and build assets. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, and I believe that is something, and I'm glad that that's been done. That has been in practice. Many of the examples you cited for about the last 10 years to get customers in. The problem that I see, and I am not a banker and could be very much mistaken, and I'm glad to see that the banks are realizing there is a problem and they do need to find a way to help the low-income individuals, even with token loans to help them get by. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience has been in order to borrow money from a lending institution, i.e. a bank or other financial institution, one has had to have collateral security.
That is not
Have they changed that regulation?
You have to have a job and enough money to pay it back with, and a decent credit rating, or at least if you have exceptions to your credit, that you are able to explain them away. Sometimes it's just a question of relationship building and faith. Bankers aren't ogres.
Yeah, oh no. In the issue that I've seen people being taken care of or are taken advantage of have unfortunately been the older couples or individuals that are on fixed income, Social Security, welfare, things of that nature. And this one man in particular, for me, it was a horror story. He was able to finally get a down payment on a rent house, but wasn't able to turn on any utilities. After 2 months, he was finally able to get the water turned on. They sat there another month eating canned goods that I had given them in the dark without any electricity to heat them with until another couple of months went by. So it is a terrible problem with these loan sharks. And I would love to see the city pursue the state legislature at the minimum in settings to maximize usury rates. But I would also, if possible, and Mr. Norris would have the idea or not of whether or not this could also be extended to private individuals using the same type of practice.
We have given you more time, but I appreciate the comments. I will make a comment back that's going to maybe rile my banker friend commissioner. But I think there is a transition with banking, and I saw times where they simply wouldn't process a low loan because there was no profit in it, because the usury rates were 18% or so. And so there was, for a $500 loan, they make nothing after they do it. I think they've realized, and I agree, they've realized that, and it's changing. But again, we're talking about educating people who fall into this trap and don't know that. We know that. You know that. But you know that because 8 people came into you after they've been totally ruined.
Yeah.
We know that because it's a new topic. And again, we carry on this conversation to educate the public and to let the people in this city know that they don't need to stop at those places. And, you know, again, I don't know how you do it. We certainly will send a resolution, but I think that we want to look at other avenues.
Is there a possibility, and I don't drive on the interstate that much or know the number of the digital Amber Alert type signs that we have on the highways?
They're
Is there a way?
text dot.
Text dot.
They belong to text.
Okay. Can different educational bullet points be run on those from time to time without?
Pretty hard thing to explain on a bullet point, is my view.
Need money, see back.
I do a lot of advertising, and I think that's tough. But again, we need to get outside the box and figure out ways. And I will tell you that statewide, cities all over the state are passing these resolutions, and the pressure is mounting on the legislature to deal with this. Should have never gotten started. But they have a lot of power. Again, it's a lot of money, not dissimilar from this last deal, and we need to keep pushing on it because it's horrendous.
I do appreciate Father Bob's story because ministers hear these stories. When people are really down and out, they go see ministers, and so that you don't understand a person's problems until you hear those real life stories.
I want you to know Commissioner Escar did share those too, in case you know.
And this is a case in point on ordinances that are passed by cities. About 5 cities in the state of Texas passed ordinances limiting geographically or whatever they did to limit payday lenders in their communities. All they did was just move out. They found a way to weasel out that ordinance so that they could keep operating. So again, it's like, the situation before. They are one step ahead of us usually because they know how to wiggle out of it and do something else. And intentions are good, but they find other ways.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments. Anyone else would like to comment on this? Okay. We have a resolution then, number 8 for payday auto lending, title lending. We have
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the resolution asking the Texas legislature and the governor to pass legislation to address the exploitation of payday and auto title lenders.
Second. A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0. Resolution, Texas Municipal Retirement System HB 718 support. This resolution expresses the support of the City of Amarillo to House Bill 718 filed by Representative Smith. House Bill 718 would provide an option under the Texas Municipal Retirement System, TMRS, to grant retirees cost of living adjustments, COLA, on a true ad hoc basis rather than on a currently required automatically repeating basis, allowing COLAs to be determined on an ad hoc basis, providing for a method for local government body to consider these adjustments on the basis of affordability and available current funding, and reduces the unfunded liabilities cities may accrue on the present repeating basis. Presently, TMRS statutes prohibit ad hoc COLAs, and this important legislation is necessary to allow cities to manage their retirees' COLA on a financially prudent basis. Mr. City Manager, could you explain this a little bit, or do we want Mr. Frigo to do that?
We'll ask Mr. Frigo to come up. He can do it fewer words than I did earlier. He's winning for the day.
It's one of his last appearances.
Yeah, no, we're going to bring him up next week.
He's coming next week.
Yeah, I'll be here next week. Yeah, this is some legislation. This will be the 3rd time that we've tried to get this passed. And as the narrative described, with TMRS right now, the only COLA option you have is a repeating COLA. And if a city were to skip a year, well, you have to go and make up for the year you skipped to grant another COLA. So in the case of Amarillo, I think we skipped either 3 or 4 years. We would literally have to make up all those cost of living adjustments in order to grant a COLA. I've worked with a lot of pension plans, and I know of no pension plan that works that way. And when you try to explain it to somebody, they say, "Are you sure?" Because that doesn't sound right, but unfortunately it is right. And there are a lot of cities like San Antonio, Amarillo, Abilene, Irving, Grand Prairie that are in similar situations. Garland, I forgot them. That we've had to drop our COLA during the recession. We would like to do something for the retirees, but you're almost prohibited from granting a COLA because you have to go make up for the ones you supposedly missed. This bill would be a true ad hoc COLA, and it would be a local controlled type bill. It would give the governing body of a city the right to increase employee pay or retiree pay. What a novel idea. And we think that's where this decision should be. It shouldn't be an all or nothing that, either we do what TMRS says or it's nothing, because that's what we've got right now. And it's really not, I said TMRS, they're not the bad guy here. They can't support the bill, but they will testify that they can administer the bill, and they have. We do think it's a good bill. I think it protects the city very well. It has another provision in there that we don't talk about much, but it says that any COLA, you can grant any COLA you want. You can grant a 1%, you can grant a 10%, but it can't be greater than what the repeating COLA would have been. So there was a fear that a city might get themselves in trouble by going back to back and granting large retiree increases. Well, we even put that protection in the bill that you really can't hurt yourself. So it's a local control bill. The police officer from Irving did testify to that there in the House. He said, we work out things with our governing body and we just want the right to be able to do that in the future. This bill, as it is right now, it does not give us that choice. So we think it's a good bill. We think it's fiscally responsible, and it has protections in there for the city, and we would recommend that this body support this bill that Smithy has filed.
Okay.
Did any of that make sense?
Yes.
Absolutely did.
Certainly did.
You were so clear, do we have any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions from the audience? If not, entertain a motion.
Mayor, I would move that we support this resolution to express the support of the city of Amarillo for House Bill 718 in the Texas Legislature.
Second.
A motion and a second for the resolution for Texas Municipal Retirement System House Bill 718 support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with 4 abstentions.
I have to abstain.
Right. So we have a vote of 4, 1 abstention, 4-0-1.
I'd like to explain why I abstained.
You're welcome to.
Okay. I needed to recuse myself from this, myself from this vote because I'm personally affected by whatever happens here. Yeah, the retirement system.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, the next item of business is a resolution. This will be a more pleasant resolution, I think. Resolution designation of Texas Enterprise Project. This resolution nominates Bell Helicopter Textron Incorporated as a qualified business and enterprise project for economic development assistance under the Texas Enterprise Zone Act. In February 2006, the city elected to participate in the Texas Enterprise Zone Program. The local initiatives offered under the resolution are the same as stated in ordinance number 6915. Subsequent nominations may be made by resolution. As an enterprise project, Bell Helicopter Textron Inc. will continue to be eligible for state sales tax refunds for taxable items purchased for its Amarillo facility and operations. The resolution does not obligate the city of Amarillo to provide any financial commitments or incentives to Bell Helicopter Textron Inc., but provides the city support to Bell Helicopter Textron Incorporated in its application for possible state of Texas economic development assistance. Are there any questions about this item from the audience, from the commission? I see we have a representative from Bell back there who's been very patient through our long meeting. Do you have any comment, Mr. Harry?
No, sir.
Okay. We thank you for being here. This, I think, will be agreed that it's a very pleasant thing to consider, and so I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would move for approval of this resolution in the designation Texas Enterprise Project for Bell Helicopter Textron. This is not, that is my motion, but would add that this affects the state's portion of the sales tax. That's zero, zippo, not an effect on the city's portion of those sales taxes.
Does that mean nothing?
Nothing.
Oh.
Zero.
I second that motion.
A motion and a second for the resolution designation of Texas Enterprise Project. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. At the beginning of the comments, if you'll hang around, George, I have a helicopter story to tell you that will be good for the whole city. Consent agenda. It's recommended the following items be approved. The city manager be authorized to execute all documents necessary for each transaction. A is the purchase of police, patrol rifles, and accessories. B is the award of firefighting clothing contract. C is the award of electric golf carts for Ross Rogers Golf Course. D is the award of fertilizer and mechanical products. E is the approval of a loan agreement between the city of Amarillo and the Amarillo Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 1. Are there any items that need to be removed for separate consideration by the commission? If not, is there any item that needs to be discussed by the audience or by the commission? If not, I entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. Well, we will move back to executive session, so that concludes the agenda for the regular scheduled meeting of the Amarillo City Commission. It's however customary at this time to allow citizens of this community with matters not on the agenda pertaining to city policy, programs, and services to speak to the commission. And the floor is now open for that comment. And I would like to begin that comment by Mr. Herring. Being a representative of Bell, I think you'll find this interesting. You've heard a little bit about it. But we have the privilege of accepting 10 guests that will pass through our town this Saturday and Sunday. They will remain here to take a tour of the Bell plant. They will travel on to the International Helicopter Show in Las Vegas, and they will return through Fort Worth and receive a tour of that. The helicopter that they're bringing through is a reconditioned from the ground up Huey that was used in Vietnam extensively and produced at Fort Worth, but obviously could have been serviced in Amarillo too. This particular one is at a museum in Peru, Indiana. They contacted several of us a few months ago and asked if we could support this. Not giving any official support, any public support, but there have been many generous people in the town help support their project to get them to the International Helicopter Show. And their view is eventually to build some kind of museum. They're obviously housed in a temporary deal up in Peru, Indiana at Grisham Air Force Base. But it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I hope the media will come out. Saturday they'll arrive from Branson on their route. They'll be here and they will give some honor flights to veterans. The Bell people are helping with this in many ways. There's local people that have given support to it. I think it's just an extraordinary once-in-a-lifetime experience. They will offer rides to some veterans, and it'll be pretty extraordinary. So.
May I say that the mayor, I've never seen him this excited. He was a helicopter pilot.
No, I was not a helicopter pilot. I was a crew chief. But this is actually the exact kind of helicopter. It was a medical evacuation or dust-off helicopter.
Or two tours.
It's an exact deal, so I'm anxious to see that. And invite anybody to come out. There'll be a TAC Air all day Sunday, and I'm guessing from 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock on. And they will be there Saturday evening sometime. And there's several groups that are putting on some entertainment and putting our best foot forward for the city. So if you can participate in that, we'd love to have you out there. So that is my comment. Any other comments from people in the audience? Please come forward.
Laura Street, 5204 Spartanburg. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Commission, Mayor Harpo and Commission. I'm here on behalf of the Amarillo Symphony Orchestra, which is one of those businesses that creates $4.6 billion in sales tax a year for the state of Texas. So it is very valuable to our community to have the Amarillo Symphony Orchestra. But I'm here as chairman of the search committee for a director, music director and conductor for the Amarillo Symphony. And I would like to introduce to you today someone who is one of the 3 finalists for our search, of which we had over 200 applicants. And so I would like to introduce Maestro Mark-Anthony Thacker, who is from Baltimore. He's a Peabody co-director of the conducting school at Peabody Conservatory, also the music director of the Duluth, Minnesota Symphony, and the Baltimore Symphony, Baltimore Chamber Orchestra. So, Maestro Thacker, would you please come forward? Thank you.
Oh no, you can't clap till after the concert. It's Mark-Anthony Thacker, and my address is 6 Howick Court in the great city of Owings Mills, Maryland. Thank you for welcoming me to Amarillo and to this meeting. I will tell you that what immediately attracted me to this position was their mission, which is the best mission for any orchestra I've ever seen. It was It is to infuse the community with unbridled enthusiasm for orchestral music, and that is absolutely our job. And I will tell you that this organization is uniquely situated to accomplish that in a couple of counts. One is that this is a fabulous orchestra. I conduct orchestras across the country. This is a national level orchestra that you have. And the second count is this community is one of self-starters. You folks made that orchestra. You folks made that Globe News Center, which is a treasure. And so I want to just leave you with a little story. Handel, toward the end of his life, he led a performance of Messiah, and someone approached him and said, "Maestro, surely you have provided a great entertainment." And Handel said, "I should be sorry if I only entertained them, for I had hoped to make them better." Now, I love that story. I'm not sure it's true because I read it on a record jacket. I do love the story, and that is exactly what music can do. We absorb the sounds, it exalts us, it makes us better. And by the way, listening to this meeting, which is inspiring, seeing you folks, the dedication that you have to making this community better, I'll also say that kids who are seriously involved in playing instruments are not in the smoke shops. So I will just say that if I should return as music director, I will look forward to partnering with you and the symphony in making this the best possible Amarillo.
So please remain for a minute. We want to thank you for being in our town. Any other comments?
I'm just thrilled to have you here. This is your second visit, and so welcome yet again. And the mayor and I got the chance to meet you the first time you were here. Very impressed.
Thank you very much, and I hope we can get those 10 helicopter folks Saturday night to the concert.
They're getting here late, and I think they're going to Coors Cowboy Club. And I don't know if you can compete with that.
What is that? I might be there. What is that? Thank you very much.
I was going to comment that Maestro certainly has to add some thoughts into your column for attending this meeting and setting through all this.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's really inspiring. It's educational and inspiring. So
thank you, thank you for being in our town.
Thank you, Laura.
Wish you the best. Anyone else would like to make a comment, please?
David Cossey, Canyon, Texas, 1014 Cimarron, and I'll actually agree 110% with his statement that people in the arts are not generally the problematic. With my wife being a theater teacher, I am a huge fan of promoting the arts for that reason, to not only give people the ability to come up here and talk to people who generally would be afraid to do so, but that was kind of the reason I came up here. I'm hoping through the education of cell phone use, which I've seen tons of commercials for, the red light cast, I finally saw one yesterday. I don't know if that was the city or a different group. So I did have just a few questions to kind of update where there's some confusion of sources. Last week I spoke up here and there were some questions to my motivation. So I had a question, is it customary for a person who leads a incentive for somebody to get out and vote or to get involved in the community to have their personal agenda researched? Is that a customary thing for the commission to do?
I would comment on that.
Sure.
I know there were some discussions about red light cameras and about traffic violations, and I know that as a member of the commission, my personal traffic history was clear to determine whether or not I've got traffic tickets in the city. So, I feel like if I'm going to be in the public eyes, that's all. And so, yes, sir, I think that's...
Right. I mean, that wasn't submitted by me, though. I mean, so that was my concern, is the customary, is it customary? Because my intention, my full motivation, and hopefully they'll add about 30 seconds for the response there, is literally to give people in Amarillo the ability to not only know what's going on in the city, but also on these questions that aren't quite clear, or the motivation from the city that isn't quite clear, to let the people decide on it. And with the cell phone one being one of the most divided issues, with roughly about 50 to 50 at the meetings from the numbers I was given, I didn't see that it was clear. In Canyon, for example, which is always the question, it was very clear that they wanted the texting ban. It was actually recommended by the public, not passed by a commission and then educated by the public. The last thing is, because of all the television ads now that are starting to expand, are there any city funds, and what amounts would those be that go towards the cell phone education, the red light camera education, and then also the Share the Road Foundation? Is there?
Well, I'd ask to refer that to staff, and they'll give you an answer after the meeting.
Okay, that sounds great. And then also, how much revenue actually leaves Amarillo? Because the sources that I pulled was from the Amarillo Globe News, who said out of $4.5 million that was raised since their existence, $1.4 million remained in Amarillo. So that says to me that half does not stay, roughly about 32%.
Of course, there is a misnomer that we decided, because of economics and to save money, that we would engage a company that can very economically deal with this and put those red light cameras in much more efficiently than we'd ever be able to do. And then we're required with the other funds to put it into the trauma state. What is that group? It's state trauma?
50% of it goes to the state trauma fund. First of all, when the revenue comes in, we deduct our costs, which includes the cost of the contract vendor, to which you're referring, Mayor. And then after that cost and our local cost, half of that remaining goes to, by state law, to the state trauma fund, and then we keep that remaining half.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely saw that. And then the last thing that I would like to request, the Federal Highway Administration said that the decrease in wrecks at intersections for the same purpose could be decreased just on organization alone by roughly about 46%, just by increasing the yellow time by 1 second. So my question is, what are the yellow times for the red light cameras versus the general cameras, the non-red light camera intersections throughout the city?
All of the yellow intervals, all of the traffic signal intervals are set by the uniform manual on traffic control devices, and I may have that acronym a little bit.
I understand.
It's a document that originates across the federal level, and each of the states do their own. That's what specifies how the timing is established based on the characteristic of the roadway, the speed of the roadway, and a few others. It's a mathematical analysis. It is not something that's variable by whether there is or is not a photographic device at that, and each and every one of ours is constantly being checked and evaluated by our traffic engineer.
Sure, because my biggest concern is Lubbock, out of their cameras that they removed in 2008, roughly about 3, because they only had about 7, but 3 of those cameras had been misconfigured and actually were under a legal challenge for not having a correct, not saying.
With a different.
Right, I was just saying.
Different program.
Scott, your 3 minutes is up, and I'm going to ask
Sure.
you to take your seat. Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? If not, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you very much for participating. Oh, we're not adjourned. We're going back to executive session.